everybody. Today's video is going to be on the Florida State wide receiver coach, Dawsey, who is also the co-offensive coordinator. And I told you I was going to do this video because, I took a look at their wide receiver position about a week or two ago, and I saw they only had 7 scholarship guys at the wide receiver position. And I was like, man, they're going to really need some help there, at least like depth and body wise, because you don't want to get injured. And of course, they're multiple. They don't always run a lot of 3, 4, 5 wide receiver sets. And in reality, they really can't do that too much this year. They run a lot of double tight ends, 3 tight ends, fullback. So they can mix it up here and to cover up that spot. But not having a lot of receivers is still a weakness for anybody. But with that said, I want to look at who is their wide receiver coach. Where he comes from, kind of what does he do, and how much success has he had, and has he been developing receivers? And so I found some interesting things. Some encouraging, some discouraging. And I'm not a Florida State fan. It's just interesting to see. But I'll just jump right into it. So Lawrence Dawsey is from Dothan, Alabama. So I got to root for my fellow Alabamians. I'm originally from Alabama myself. And he played at Florida State, like during Bobby Bowden, during their peak years when they were winning championships in the 90s and all that good stuff. He went on to play in the NFL with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I believe. And after that, he got into a little bit of high school coaching in the Tampa area. And look at this. He, of course, was a graduate assistant at LSU in 2003 under who? Nick Saban, who also was there at the same time, Jimbo Fisher. So, it just happens. It just goes on, man. These guys really like to stick together. But either way, he moved on and he was the wide receivers coach at USF, which is the University of South Florida, which is still in that Tampa area. So he stayed in his area. He really liked Florida, I guess. And finally, he came on home to Florida State when they hired him on as the wide receivers coach under then head coach Bobby Bowden. And we know the story as went along. Jimbo took over, and Lawrence Dawsey has still been there 10 years running. Here we are. With that being said, let's jump into the Florida State wide receiver situation over the years, and I'll talk about where they are now. So, Florida State fans, I wonder if you'll get this. So, Rashad Green, Kelvin Benjamin, Chris Davis. And you may have to be an older Florida State fan to understand that last one. But what do those 3 have in common? I'm just giving you a second here. What they have in common is that they are the only Florida State wide receivers to have been drafted since 2007. Those 3. I found it really shocking myself. I was like, whoa, they had some pretty solid guys over the years. But when you look at the NFL draft, Rashad Green, 5th round, in which year was that? Was that 2015 draft? I believe so, yeah. And then Kelvin Benjamin went 1st round of the 2013 or 14 draft. And Chris Davis went in the 4th round of the 2007 draft. Now, the interesting thing is, this has been under Lawrence Dawsey here. Only 3 of his receivers have been drafted. And technically, I can't count Chris Davis because Chris Davis was there before Lawrence Davis actually started coaching. Chris Davis left after the 2006 season and he got drafted in 2007 draft. Lawrence Dawsey came on to start coaching in the 2007 season. So really, you can only count Kelvin Benjamin and Rashad Green as the only ones who've been drafted to an NFL team. Now, he's had guys go in on undrafted free agents and a few others. Now, I'll get into that. But that's been really, really interesting, and that's something that I want to talk about here. Now, with that being said, in the 2013 season, he was named the wide receiver coach of the year, actually. Because, that was the year they had Jameis Winston. They had a really good offense. They won a national championship, beat Auburn. They had Kelvin Benjamin, had Rashad Green, and they had Kenny Shaw. They had a team. And, of course, like I said, and Winston was there. And Winston, of course, made the offense better. He was a smart quarterback. He threw the ball with good anticipation, wasn't afraid to get it to his playmakers. And these guys have been some of the most successful receivers during Lawrence Dawsey's tenure. So he obviously did a good job with these guys in particular. But this is really interesting because it's like, well, what about the rest of the team? Why doesn't it seem like the other years they haven't been as successful in that wide receiver core. And I think I got one of the reasons why, and it's actually similar to the offensive line situation. With that being said, I want to talk about Kenny Shaw a little bit because he was like one of the better receivers during this time. He didn't make it in the NFL, but he is in the Canadian Football League right now with the Ottawa Red Blacks. So he's got some success. Also, we had Burt Reed, who I think was there in the early years, like before Jimbo had went on this big run of success. But Burt Reed went as an undrafted free agent with the Browns. He didn't make it, ended up going on with different teams, and he tried to bring the football league, but he couldn't make it there as well. So he was talented enough to, at least get a tryout from some teams, but he really didn't make it too far. So that makes me wonder, though. I wanted to say, well, they didn't have a lot of guys drafted in the NFL. Why is that? Who have they been recruiting? How many guys have they brought in? And I found something really, 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 really interesting. And like I said, it's similar to the offensive line situation. So if you recall, the 2017 receiver class from Florida State in that recruiting class, they had two receivers, DJ Matthews and Tamarion Terry. Two receivers total. Now, you may say, okay, so they only brought two receivers. They were down a year. Problem is, last year in the 2016 cycle, they brought in one receiver, and that receiver was Keith Gavin. He's a four-star recruit. So, in a period of 2 years, they've only brought in three receivers, and this is a trend. Let me keep going down. Now, this year's an anomaly. 2015, is the anomaly. 2015, they brought in George Campbell, who was a five-star, Devontae Phillips, who was a four-star, Alden Tate, who was a four-star, and Nyquan Murray, or Nooney, as they call him, as three-star recruit. So they brought in four receivers in 2015 because they obviously had to replenish depth, and this is the reason why. 2014 class, they brought in Erman Lane, who's a five-star recruit, who's no longer a receiver, by the way. He's playing safety. And they brought in Travis Rudolph, who was a four-star recruit who just went undrafted for the draft. I think he left early, and he didn't get drafted as well. So that's really interesting. But they only brought in those two guys in the 2014 class. And both those guys are no longer playing receiver for the team, for Florida State. So they had to make up for a lot of loss. And that's not it, though. Let me go down to 2013. 2013 recruiting class, they had three receivers. Isaiah Jones, Kermit Whitfield, Jesus Wilson. Now, Isaiah Jones, I don't know where he went. He probably transferred or he's just buried on the depth chart. I don't know. Haven't heard much about him. He's a four-star. Kermit Whitfield, he was him along with Rudolph and Jesus Wilson. So those three, two guys from the 13 class and one guy from the 14 class made up the starting receiver corps for Florida State last year. Those guys are gone now, all three of them. Kermit Whitfield, he's as an undrafted free agent. He didn't get drafted as well, but he was picked up as free agent by the Bears. Don't know what he's doing on their roster right now. And Jesus Wilson was an undrafted free agent as well with the Bucks, because they signed him as a free agent. And interesting, he was the leading receiver on Florida State last year, so he was beating even Rudolph until he got injured in week 7 during the middle of the season. So that's something that was interesting, but all those guys are now gone. Now all gone, and none of them got drafted. But that's not relevant to the depth chart point I'm making. So if you're keeping up with what I'm telling you right now, all the receivers from the 2013 and the 2014 class are no longer playing for the team or do not factor into the depth chart, because they only brought in 5 guys total from the 2013 and 14 class. Not to mention 2012, they only had one receiver there as well, just Marvin Bracey. I don't know what happened to him. I never heard his name before. And then, of course, before that 2011 season, they had Kelvin Benjamin and Rashad Green. So there was 2 receivers. So you're seeing a trend of only bringing in like a couple guys, which can be very, very hard on your depth chart. And in 2010 was Kenny Shaw and the Joshua Johnson who didn't play. So if you add up 2010 and 11 and 12, only 3 of those guys out of 5 were a factor on the team, and 2 of them disappeared. And then if you broaden it out from 2010 to 2014, it looks a little better here, but when you broaden it out here from 2010 to 2014, 1, 2, 3, I'm counting up here, 4, 5, 6. 6 guys out of 5 recruiting classes, 6 wide receivers out of 5 recruiting classes made an impact on the team. 6 out of 5 years is not good from a number standpoint. Now, these guys, the guys who did play, the 6 guys, they played, they started. They may not have been superstars, they didn't get drafted, but they played and started. Uh, but when you only have 6, that becomes an issue because now you have to catch up, which is why I said 2015 season, they had to go recruit a whole bunch of receivers. They got George Campbell, Devontae Phillips, Alden Tate, and Naquan Murray. And I'm not even going to go back. I went all the way back to 2008. And it was like a trend of just a very small amount of receivers being brought in. And that's really, really interesting because I wonder the lack of NFL interest in the Florida State receivers. I wonder if that is used against them in recruiting um, and causes them not to be able to receive good receiver recruits. Florida State fans, let me know what you think about that because Lawrence Dawsey is not known to be a bad recruiter. He's above average recruiter from what I've heard. And, he played in Tampa, so, he has a lot of connections in the area. That's why they hired him at USF. So it's interesting to see what's the reason why they haven't been able to bring in more guys, and 2, is Lawrence Dawsey doing enough to develop the receivers that Florida State is bringing in? That is a very, very, very interesting question that I don't know if I have the answer to, and I'm just looking at the names here and over the years, some of the numbers. Because from what it looks like, he tends to get some guys who he can get some production out of when they are injured, of course, but they're not seeming to be overly talented or at least superstar level. Or it seems that maybe he can't get them to take their talent to the next level. Now, that's something I can't say for certain. That's something Florida State fans have to fill me in on. What do you guys think of Lawrence Dawsey's coaching? Do you think he is a good wide receivers coach? Do you think he's a good recruiter? That's an interesting question. We'll see because they're banking. Florida State is banking on the 2015 receiver recruiting class to impact this team in a big way and step up and be the depth chart for the wide receiver position. Like I said, they have 7 scholarship receivers. And Lawrence Dawsey is going to have to coach his butt off because he's going to have to get George Campbell to live up to the lofty 5-star ranking. They've been trying to get Devontae Phillips more work into the game. He's working out in the slot, although he has some drops. But, that's not here to there. Alden Tate, a lot of you are expecting him to step up and have a good year. And then, of course, Naquan Murray, he did his thing last year, so they're expecting him to continue and get better. But Lawrence Dawsey is going to have to make these guys work. And, of course, Keith Gavin, they had to get him in there as well. So, and we don't know what the freshman guys are going to do. So, this is going to be a very, very interesting year. I was just really, really almost dumbfounded at the receiver position for Florida State. This isn't something I would have necessarily expected, but I don't follow Florida State as much. Being a Bama fan, I follow a lot of Alabama. So, with that being said, it's going to be interesting to see how Florida State handles their depth chart and all those things that matter in terms of their packages and formations and scheme, like I said in the other video. Florida State fans, what do you think? How do you think your receiver situation will turn out to be? Are you optimistic? Do you believe in Dawsey's ability to coach these guys? Leave your comments in the video. Let me know what you think. I'm looking forward to the next video. I'll probably talk about defensive line or something. Thanks for paying attention.